Alright, vinyl community, back again with yet another VCLT video. This one comes from a Jimmy M. Now, he was gracious enough to send me VCLT before, and out of the blue, he sent me a note saying, "Hey, I want to send you a record. I really want to do this." I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I personally, I've had too much VCLT this year, but I thank the folks that have sent me things. So Jimmy M, if you're not aware, he just started making videos, which is fantastic. It's great to get a younger perspective in the VC. In fact, we share one thing in common, our love for Van Halen, and he was listening to Van Halen through high school, which I think is fantastic. But he listens to a lot of other things, and I'm always interested in what he has to show. I recommend folks check out his channel. But anyway, so I'll crack this open. We'll see what he sent me. So there is a note I see with this, which I will read afterwards. And he has sent me, oh, cool. I am impressed. Archie Shepp, Attica Blues. I do like some Archie Shepp stuff. He's definitely a bit freer than what I am used to, but I want to see what this sounds like. I have actually heard of this one. This one came out on Verve, and it comes with a very interesting book. In fact, this is a Vinyl Me Please issue. So, remastered by Kevin Gray, 180 gram vinyl. So, like I've been doing recently, I will clean this guy up, spin it a few times, and come back in a week or two and let you know what I think. Hello VC, I'm back. It's been honestly several weeks since I cracked this album open, and I've had a couple things going on. My father passed away unexpectedly, and then we had the hurricane, which has impacted my ability to play records. But anyway, I wanted to get back to this. I've actually received a few other VCLT packages that I really need to get on, but this was not at all what I was expecting. I mean, I have an appreciation for Archie Shepp. Some of his albums I'm kind of looking for, like Mama Too Tight, which is a classic. But most free jazz, avant-garde jazz, I have a hard time getting my brain wrapped around. And I've always found Shepp to be a fascinating figure. So I was expecting this to be extremely free, and I was a little bit surprised that Jimmy had picked this up. So, and I understand why he didn't like it. And for me, when it's a brand new art form, I really like to research it a little bit to try and get my head into what the composer's head was. If you do that a little bit, sometimes you appreciate things that much more. And, you know, reading up on Attica Blues and the inspiration behind it, I understand now where he was coming from, and it heightened my appreciation for this album. And I've played it 2 or 3 times now. But this is based on the Attica prison riots that happened in September of 1971. And half the inmates in the prison, which is in New York, basically took hostages, and they took over the prison. And that riot lasted for 4 days, and it ended up with 43 people dying in the riot. And the inmates were basically protesting the conditions of the prison, the lack of certain freedoms like religious freedoms that you would expect. Those just did not exist in Attica, which is notorious for the criminals in which it was housing. But one of the inspirations behind this, there was a piece called Blues for Brother George Jackson. And I found this piece, I like this piece the best. And now George Jackson was not an inmate at Attica. He was actually an inmate at San Quentin. And he died 2 weeks prior to the Attica riot. George Jackson was actually a member of the Black Panthers at one point. He was also a Marxist, Leninist type guy, and his death was actually one of the inspirations behind the riot. But this features a number of players. And let me just open the gatefold for you. And this is very true to the original pressing. Now this features Jimmy Garrison, who was the bassist for John Coltrane. It does feature a few other players that you might know. So Walter Davis Jr., for example, Charles McGee, Jimmy Garrison, which I just mentioned, and then Billy Higgins, the drummer. There's a number of other people which I'm not familiar with, but this is not free jazz, although it does have some styling. I mean, he can't Archie, who was the composer for most of the songs, he didn't do all the lyrics. He doesn't completely break away from the free avant-garde style, but it is a very interesting listen throughout, and I found it very listenable. A lot of free jazz, I don't care to return to it, but I would return to this album because I understand it more. And it starts out, it doesn't sound like jazz at all. It starts out with a soul funk number, Attica Blues, and let me give you a cut of that. So there's a couple of other spoken word pieces on here, and the spoken word pieces are read by William Kunstler, and William Kunstler was actually one of the lawyers that represented several of the prisoners that rioted at Attica. So it's very interesting to hear his voice, so here's just a sample of that for you.
Only when nature doesn't take its natural toll am I worried with the human soul. Some people think that they are in their rights when on command they take a black man's life. Now let me give a rundown on how I feel. If it ain't natural, then it ain't real. I wish I were better.
Now there are a couple other tracks on here which are very interesting. So I mentioned Blues for Brother George Jackson. Again, this was my favorite cut on the album. Let me play a sample of this for you. It has some very interesting instrumentals. So here's a couple other tracks. I'm going to play Goodbye Sweet Pops and Quiet Dawn, which features the daughter of Cal Massey on here. And she's fairly young at the time, so it has this weird haunting vibe to it. So here you go. Here's the cuts from these two. So the pressing on this was fantastic. It was done by Kevin Gray, as was on the hype sticker, but the group at RTI actually did the plating for it, like I'm showing you here. It has 2 here in parentheticals. Now 2 indicates that they got as far as doing the mother. Now the mother was probably handed over to GZ Vinyl, which is in the Czech Republic. So here's the GZ Vinyl matrix, and GZ must have done the stampers from here. I am curious, there was a late 2000 press of this album. I'm wondering if Vinyl Me Please happen to get access to, you know, the stampers for this. So if any of you guys have that 2000, late 2000 cut of this, please let me know. And another interesting thing, if one of you guys has an original, this does not have the standard impulse band to it. And I incorrectly said at the beginning of the video that it was done on Verve. And Verve actually owns Impulse, and both companies are owned by Universal Music. So again, this is worthwhile. It came with a nice book too, Attica Blues, and the author is Ben Ratcliffe, who is a noted jazz critic, music critic for either the New Yorker or the New York Times. I can't remember which, but yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, but you know, if you like the sampling, it's not free jazz. It has elements of it, big band, funk, soul, gospel. It's all thrown in the mix. So you know, if you like the samples, I recommend going for it. So yeah, and a few of you are probably interested in the hurricane status. So all the water receded from my neighborhood, but 30% of the homes, including my next door neighbor and 2 or 3 houses down, all had water intrusion, like I'm showing you here in this photo. And then I did travel into Dickinson, which is just south of me, and some areas it's like driving through a war zone. Just seeing all the debris, all the houses that are now being gutted. It's very depressing. My wife and I are helping out some folks who got hit pretty hard that live next to one of the bayous. So yeah, here's some footage of that, and with that I will close this one off. So thank you for watching.